Order. Wendy Moulton to move the motion, please.
I beg to move that this House has considered the impact of fly tipping on communities in the West Midlands. And let me start by saying it is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today, Mr Stringer, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to raise this important issue, particularly as it coincides with the conclusion of the Great British Spring Clean, which I know many colleagues on both sides of the House take part in. Now, when it comes to fly tipping, I know it's not only a growing concern in my own constituency of Aldridge Brownhills, but across the wider West Midlands region too. And in fact, beyond. And I've noticed on my social media of late and in my inbox, once people were aware of this debate, a number of people have been in touch to say that they have fly tipping issues locally as well. Because, of course, in some areas it has become a persistent and damaging problem. And it's vital that we come together to explore practical solutions and collaborative efforts to tackle its impact on our communities. I often consider litter and fly tipping to be an expensive nuisance, and to me that sums it up in a very short and succinct way. Now, Keep Britain Tidy, which does so much to raise awareness on the issue of fly tipping and littering, estimates that local authorities in England dealt with 1.15 million fly tipping incidents in 2023-24, which was up by 6% on the year before. And 60% of all fly tipping involves household waste, and it's costing the economy a staggering £1 billion, with enough fly-tipped waste to fill Wembley Stadium 30 times over. It really is quite shocking that in this day and age we see this amount of fly tipping ongoing. But of course, for those of us who represent the West Midlands, we are also dealing with our own fly tipping and littering situation thanks to Labour-run Birmingham City Council's bin strike. And I'm a little bit disappointed that there are no Birmingham City representatives on the opposite benches, but I do believe there's a colleague from Birmingham Northfield. There we go. Well, I'm really pleased that you have been able to join us, because there is a large number of Labour MPs in Birmingham City. Now, of course I will.
I thank the honourable member for giving way and congratulate her on today's debate. A deposit return scheme where you bring plastic bottles and cans back to the shop and get your money back using a reverse vending machine has reduced black sack litter in many countries across Europe and the world. So could the honourable member explain why her party voted against a deposit return scheme when it was voted on in Parliament on the 21st of January this year, despite having previously backed it as part of the solution to fly tipping?
The Honourable Lady makes an interesting point, and when it comes to recycling schemes, it is something that I absolutely support, and the Conservatives do more broadly. When it came to that specific vote, which I believe was before the Honourable Lady came into this House, it wasn't a UK-wide vote. I think that was the issue. But when it comes to recycling and bottle deposit schemes and return schemes, it's absolutely something that we need to be working cross-party to find the best way forward. But it has to work with individuals, with communities, and with the producers as well. Now, the current and ongoing bin strike in Labour-run Birmingham is now having a very detrimental effect on every one of us who share a border with Birmingham. For example, my honourable friend for Solihull West, who cannot be with us today, Solihull West and Shirley, his constituency abuts Hall Green in Birmingham. On one side, the bins are piling up, whereas over the border, on the other side, in Conservative-run Solihull, the streets are clean. And in the past few weeks, similarly, my honourable friend for Bromsgrove and the villages has highlighted the similar situation on the border of his constituency. But with the... Yeah, of course I will.
I am grateful to her for giving way, and she highlights an issue that affects my constituency as well as the member for Bromsgrove. Given that party politics has been mentioned, I just want to put it on record that there have been disruptive bin strikes in Conservative-run authorities over recent years. Wiltshire, Arder, Worthing all spring to mind. Does she agree that there is no particular party pattern here and that Conservative-run authorities are by no means immune to the issues that she raises?
Entirely party political debate, because actually I think there is so much cross-party support when it comes to tackling these issues. But what I would say when it comes to Birmingham, the size and the magnitude of it is my biggest concern of all, and making sure that it actually gets sorted out. So as I was saying, as a number of my right honourable and honourable friends have been raising this as well. But with the amount of uncollected waste rising to a staggering, this is the key thing, 21,000 tonnes, it's an absolutely eye-watering amount. And what's also eye-watering is we now have cats as big as rats, no, rats as big as cats, hurtling around the city. And we all know that these squeaky blinders, as they've now been coined, just do not respect borders. There are some residents in the city who are also, I have heard, burning the waste, as they simply don't know when the next bin collection will take place. I have staff members who live in Birmingham who haven't had their waste collected for over a month and who've had no recycling collection services all year. This isn't right. It's not fair, and so it's only right and proper that we call on the government to sort this out. Now, like my right honourable friend, the member for Sutton Coldfield, who's not able to be present with us today, but he's in agreement with me, the situation that residents face is quite abominable. And some residents are taking responsibility by seeking to go to the recycling centres, sensible, but this is having a knock-on effect in constituencies such as mine, with people seeking to access our recycling centres in Aldridge, and on one occasion it was reported that it had brought gridlock to Aldridge. And it's also worth remembering that when this happens, it's Walsall Council taxpayers who are left footing the bill. But at its worst, as has been observed in my honourable friend for Bromsgrove's constituency, people are driving out of the city to dump rubbish in the absence of councillors doing their job and sorting out the bin strikes and cleaning up the mess. And we now have a bin strike, which is a major public health emergency, as the Minister will be very aware. Andy Street said last week this is having a major impact on the reputation of Birmingham and the wider West Midlands, which will take years to recover from. Birmingham is making headlines on a daily basis, as far away as Australia, for all the wrong reasons. And the longer this standoff goes on, the worse the situation will become, with more than 4,000 tonnes of rubbish being added to the current 21,000 on a weekly basis.
Well, my honourable friend,
of course.
My honourable friend's making an excellent speech and demonstrating yet again what a powerful champion she is for her constituents and region. But I'm sure she's aware that last night on the BBC News they were reporting from Birmingham around the Prime Minister's visit, but also about the rubbish collection issue. And does she share my concerns that this sends out a very negative message to potential tourists in the global market about what's happening here in the UK just now?
Thank you, Mr. Stringer. My honourable friend makes a really, really important point here. And I'm just about to come on to this because the reputation of a city, of a country, is so important when we're trying to attract inward investment and grow our economy. And it's only 3 years ago that under the leadership of Andy Street, who was the then mayor, Birmingham and the wider West Midlands was being showcased as the host of the Commonwealth Games. And now, 3 years on, it feels like we're being showcased for all the wrong reasons as a basket case because of a bankrupt council that can't empty their own bins. Now, under the previous Labour leadership of Birmingham, before he was unceremoniously dispatched by the National Executive Committee, we were promised a golden decade. Well, it's really disappointing because if that was the case, and this is what the golden decade is, I can only despair. And it's important also not to forget this is the second time in only 7 years that we've had bin strikes on our doorstep in Birmingham. And I think, residents really do feel enough is enough. The public health emergency, because that's what it is now, has to end. Not just for the residents of Birmingham, but for residents in my constituency, those who are bordering Birmingham, who are feeling it's effects. Now, I know that my own local council are looking at, as indeed other neighbouring councils are looking at ways to assist Birmingham, but I do feel this would just be putting a sticking plaster on the problem, which is a problem that needs sorting out. And it would come at extra cost. So I would just like to ask the Minister today, if this were to be the case and other local authorities were helping, can we be reassured that any costs incurred would be funded by the government or Birmingham City Council? Because I don't feel it's the job of my local taxpayers to be funding the clean-up of Birmingham's streets in Labour Council's streets in Birmingham. Now, on fly tipping specifically, the challenges posed, I think we would all agree, are significant. However, it's heartening to see that proactive leadership can make a real difference. And so I don't want to just speak about Birmingham. I actually want to highlight some good work that has been done when it comes to fly tipping, because I think this is equally important. Because in stark contrast to that situation in Birmingham, where residents are enduring the ongoing bin strikes, Walsall Council has really been demonstrating outstanding commitment to keeping their communities, our communities, clean and safe. And I pay tribute to the leadership there and to all the staff as well. Because under Conservative leadership, Walsall has taken decisive action to combat fly tipping and improve waste management. And I think the results really speak for themselves. Walsall's operational teams work tirelessly to ensure that waste is collected efficiently with one of the highest performance rates in the country. And over the past year, the council has successfully completed 7 million bin collections on time, achieving an outstanding success rate of 99.96%. And in a climate where some councils are failing to maintain basic services, it's only fair that we recognise that this level of dedication and public service is a testament to the commitment of the team in Walsall. And by keeping our streets clean, Walsall isn't just ensuring a healthier environment, it's enhancing the quality of life for residents, it's supporting local businesses and making the area a more attractive place to live and work. But what's more, Walsall's really innovative approach to tackling fly tipping has, in my view, been nothing short of remarkable. And I just want to share a couple of examples. So take, for example, the Environmental Crime Scene project, which has delivered tangible, long-lasting results. It was launched in February 2023, and the initiative treats fly-tipped areas as crime scenes to deter illegal dumping. Since its introduction, Mr Stringer, reports of bulky waste fly tipping have plummeted from 40 to just 5 a day, and up to 70% of fly tips have been removed by the perpetrators in some of our local wards. And the Environmental Crime Scene project has really sent out a clear message: fly tipping will not be tolerated in Walsall. The council has also organised a range of events bringing together councillors and volunteers to tackle fly tipping hotspots across the borough. Thanks to an incredible network of dedicated litter pickers, over 67,000 bags of rubbish have been collected across the whole of the borough in the past 5 years. Now, I hate to imagine what size a mountain of bags that is, but that is quite some rubbish that has been collected by litter pickers who've been doing this on a voluntary basis. And in my Aldridge Brown Hills constituency, I know of groups such as the Pelsall Wombles, the Walsall Wood Wombles, the Feasy Park Farm Pickers. I was out with them on Sunday. You know, so many individuals, so many community groups, the Friends of Streetley Library, who are really making a difference. And it's been really heartwarming as well to see our local schools get involved in the Great British Spring Clean initiative and other initiatives. Pelsall Village School have been involved. And just as I was walking over to Westminster Hall this afternoon, I noticed that Shire Oak Academy had taken part in the Great Big School Clean-up. Now, I hadn't even come across that initiative before, but I thought what a really good way of encouraging the next generation to take part. Because,
Honourable Frank, have we?
Yes, of course.
I'm grateful. She's been very, very generous with her time. I recently spent some time with the Keeping Duns blooming, marvellous group picking up litter around Duns, and there's dozens of groups across the Scottish borders doing similar work. But does she share my view that, while she's right to highlight the great work that Conservative-led councils are achieving, very often it's in partnership with voluntary groups and volunteers that they're able to achieve such success?
And my honourable friend makes a really important point here, and I know there are some beautiful villages in the Scottish border. I've been fortunate to visit many on many occasions. But he highlights that how these community-led initiatives haven't just improved local cleanliness, but they also really help foster a strong culture of environmental awareness, of education and civic pride. And it is this proactive and community-focused approach that sets Walsall apart from the ongoing challenges faced by neighbouring areas, where waste management issues continue to spiral. Walsall's model should be a beacon of best practice for other local authorities to follow. Now, Mr Stringer, turning back to the national picture, when we were in government, we took decisive action to tackle the scourge of fly tipping. Under the Antisocial Behaviour Action Plan, we increased the upper limit of on-the-spot fines for fly tipping to £1,000 in July 2023. We also supported local authorities to better deliver for their communities. In 2022, we launched the Fly Tipping Grant Scheme, which awarded £450,000 to crack down on fly tipping in local communities. Following the success of measures including roadside CCTV, social media campaigns and targeted surveillance at hotspot areas, we almost doubled the amount of funding available for councils in 2023 to £775,000. And I know in Walsall the use of CCTV has made a big difference in some of the fly tipping hotspots. And then last May in government we went further. We announced a third round of grants which would see 26 local authorities across England benefit from a share of almost £1 million, with individual grants of up to £50,000. Now, I know there's always more that we can do. The work isn't finished yet because the litter and the fly tipping is still out there. So I'd like to ask the Minister today what plans there are to build on the successes of the grant scheme, and if he's able to announce a fourth round. Well, perhaps Birmingham may be able to take advantage of that if there was another round. In 2024, our manifesto pledged to punish the polluters by making fly tipping an offence that carries penalty points against your driving licence. I think this is a sensible measure that would introduce a further deterrent by directly linking fly tipping to driving penalties. And I do believe that we need to give further consideration to this type of action. Individuals and businesses would think twice about offending if they risked losing the ability to drive or some points on their licence. It may even allow us to deter those who may choose to absorb the costs of a fine. And we have the forthcoming crime and policing bill, and I think this is a golden opportunity to implement this type of reform. And I know that my honourable friend, the member for Stockton West, the Shadow Minister, has tabled, I believe, an amendment at Bill Committee on this piece of legislation. And I know that the Minister of State for Crime, Policing and Fire said she would ask her DEFRA counterpart to consider the benefits of enabling endorsement with penalty points for fly tippers. It was also interesting, I was reading a report prepared by Policy Exchange called Litterbugs 2. I'm sure the Minister will have seen it, or probably his officials have, in which it calls for higher penalties and a local authority league table. And this is interesting, a national litter awareness course. I think these are all worthy ideas that we need to continue to explore, because we cannot just rely on volunteer litter groups. We cannot just rely on councils. Government can't do everything. It really needs a cross-government, multi-layered approach. So I'd be grateful if the Minister could enlighten us today on his view on this matter. And I'm sure that he shares my desire to see some sensible reforms that strengthen the deterrence against fly tipping. And I personally would like to see that extended to litter as well, because try as I might, I've yet to really find a clear definition of the difference between fly tipping and litter. So let's tackle it all in one go. Now, on a recent litter pick in my own constituency, I also couldn't help but notice that litter was being thrown just indiscriminately out of vehicles, hence my previous point. And members of a local litter picking group at the weekend were asking very pertinent questions around slip roads to highways. And if he hasn't noticed already, and I'm sure he probably has, I would suggest to the Minister, if you're travelling or driving around, take notice of the vast quantities of litter and fly tipping that we often see on the sides of roads or on the slip roads going onto motorways. And some clarity as to who is responsible. Is it councils? Is it Highways England? Is it the same approach right across the country? And as I come towards the conclusion of my contribution today, Mr Stringer, I think it's also time that we properly recognise the incredible work of volunteers. My honourable friend, the member for Meriden, has rightly highlighted with me the importance of providing funding to local parish councils and encouraging collaboration with local businesses, particularly to support the installation of more ANPR cameras to deter and catch offenders. But I wonder whether we could actually look at some greater recognition for some of these individuals, maybe some through the honours system, which I think could do so much more to inspire and reward people at the grassroots level. Could we have some way of recognising some litter champions, those individuals and groups who go above and beyond in their communities? They deserve more than a thank you. A lot of them wouldn't expect it, but they do so much good work. And in Walsall Borough, we are proud. We have over 1,000 registered volunteers. We have 9 community litter picking hubs where residents can sign up and collect equipment. There is a huge amount of good work happening at the grassroots level. But government must play its part too. We cannot expect councils and volunteers to carry the full weight of this challenge alone. So, to conclude, I have a few asks for the Minister. He'd be disappointed, I'm sure, if I didn't. But I genuinely think, and sitting in a DEFRA questions in the main chamber the other week, there was so much cross-party support for tackling this problem. There must be some way that we can move this agenda forward. So what I'm asking for is, can we have a national debate and a clear action plan that leads to real, measurable delivery that makes a difference to our communities? Would you consider the appointment of a litter and fly tipping champion in government to lead a joined-up cross-departmental approach? And I can assure you I'm not bidding for that job, but I do think that that role could be a really important one, rather like we have champions and we have envoys in other departments. A strong commitment to education and a zero-tolerance strategy, because it is so important that we shift public behaviour, because that is what a lot of this is about. Shifting public behaviour and attitudes towards fly tipping and litter. It is not acceptable to drop litter. And finally, on enforcement. We need to move beyond warm words and see concrete actions to tackle this costly and persistent blight on our communities. So with the promised 13,000 extra police officers, maybe that extra resource can be used to tackle this nationwide problem. But thank you, Mr Stringer.
Members, if they wish to be called, they should bob. The question is that this House has considered the impact of fly tipping on communities in the West Midlands. Lawrence Turner.
Thank you very much, Mr Stringer. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, and I'd like to start by congratulating the Right Honourable Member for Aldridge Brownhills on securing today's debate, and we'll talk about some of the issues that she raised, specifically in relation to Birmingham, but this is an issue which attracts attention in every region and indeed is an issue across the West Midlands region, as she rightly said. I'd like to also pay tribute to some of the volunteer groups in my constituency, such as the Rubery Wombles, who do excellent work. And just this weekend, I joined a community litter pick to clear one of the walkways off Tor Avenue in Northfield, which had accumulated a volume of fly-tipped litter that didn't come about through a particular organised group. It was simply residents getting in contact and suggesting that we come together to take matters into our own hands and clear that waste. I thought she also raised some really very valid points about those areas where there is an overlap in responsibility between national agencies such as National Highways and local authorities, and some of the problems that can arise at those points, which I'm sure is familiar to all of us through our constituency casework. I will just say, and working with the right honourable member on other areas, she started by talking about who was in the chamber. Just in case it wasn't clear for the parliamentary record, I would just like to point out that not only am I standing here as a Birmingham City MP, that of the 3 political parties that are represented at a parliamentary level in the City of Birmingham, it is only Labour that is represented in this debate today. But this debate is very timely. I'll very happily give way.
At the time, I did apologise forgive me for forgetting you were North Birmingham, Northfield. I won't do that again. But just on that point about balance, I am a Conservative with a West Midlands seat, and the Conservative Party is represented in this debate. There's also my honourable friend he may be a Scottish Conservative, but I'm not going to hold that against him, and he's part of this debate too.
Well, of course, she's exactly right to say that there is West Midlands Conservative Party representation. I'm merely making a point about the city. Now, we don't have the same figures for the region, but nationally, fly tipping incidents rose by, I believe, 37% between 2010-11 and 2023-24. And for the West Midlands, where records start a little later, we can say that the rate of increase has been higher. The number of fly tipping incidents that are recorded rose by 80% between 2012-13 and 23-24. And in fact, within the City of Birmingham, that rate of increase was lower until we got to this current very difficult period of industrial dispute. So this is an issue in communities across the whole region. And I do see that in my constituency. As I was saying just yesterday, residents and users of Bell Holloway in Northfield, which is a arterial route in the constituency, found that the road had been closed due to fly tipping in nearby woodlands, which is not the first time that such incidents have happened on that particular road. And through my constituency postbag, I've picked up a large number of very serious recurring cases across the constituency. There is a set of flats in the Longbridge area where there is some confusion over land ownership, and it seems that organised groups are taking advantage of this grey area to repeatedly fly tip at this location. And I know that this is a serious problem on private land, in particular when landowners may not have the resources to respond to regular and large volume fly tipping. My office, and I'd like to pay tribute to everyone who works in my office, because while as MPs we individually do take up casework, of course it is the people who work for us who take on much of the heavy load. Have cleared regular fly tipping in Wheelie Castle car park, and I've also helped to secure permanent physical adaptations at a site on the Frankley estate, which has helped to deter repeat fly tipping. And just turning to the strike in Birmingham, we have seen just this morning a very unfortunate incident where the mobile waste centres which are sent out around the city, which sadly over the last week have become the subject of some misinformation about when and where these mobile centres will be deployed. We found that on Varden Way in Kings Norton, that overnight a very large number of black bagged waste was dumped at that site, which will, of course, reduce the capacity for residents who do attend that mobile service at the advertised time. And I would like to pay tribute to Councillor Corrigan, who I've worked, Councillor Corrigan, for Kings Norton North, who I've worked closely with over the last 24 hours to make sure that that waste was cleared. I will give way.
Coming from Birmingham. I'm sure the honourable member probably watched the pictures himself, but there were scenes of the the refuge trucks trying to leave the council depot to go and collect rubbish, but being stopped by Unite trade unionists, blocking the trucks from leaving the depot and then slow walking in front of the refuge trucks so they could not do their collections. Will the honourable member do the right thing and condemn the actions of those trade unionists and stand up for his constituents who want their rubbish collected by those trucks that those union workers are stopping getting out?
Well, thank you, Mr Stringer. And just for the avoidance of doubt, I am a member of Unite, the trade union. I was on the BBC myself actually talking about exactly these issues over the weekend. There has been a change in the policing of the egress from the depots, one of which is in my constituency. We have also seen at the start of last week that a major incident was declared in Birmingham, which I support the action taken, which are leading to what should be a 40% increase in the number of trucks that are able to leave those depots. And I hope that that means that there will be a change in the frequency of collections, which are, I can see that some of the members may be thinking about intervening.
I was just letting the honourable gentleman finish his sentence. Just to say, though, does he agree with me, though, that yes, there was a public emergency declared. It is good news if a few more trucks are getting out, because as my right honourable friend talked about earlier, yes, lorries have been slowed in getting out of the depots. But the only way to crack this is to break the strike, to fight for the government and Birmingham City Council and the commissioners, if necessary, to get back round the table and sort this, because the only people that are losing out are the residents.
Well, look, I will just say, first of all, that the 40% increase, I think, is more than a few by any measure. But on the substantive points that she raised, I was a trade union official. In my experience, the vast majority of disputes are ended by the two parties, and the two parties here are Unite the Union and Birmingham City Council, coming to an agreement. Now, talks have resumed. That is positive. I think those of us who stand in this place have a responsibility through our words and our rhetoric not to make a resolution less likely to be achieved. Now, the exact details are held by those people in those discussions. I'm hoping that we will see some news from those discussions soon, because the strike does need to come to an end. And I hope that the offer, which is on the table, will be put to Unite members in a ballot. And the reality is that the bin collection service in my constituency was not good enough before the strike, and that is a very important point that we cannot lose sight of. Waste collection rates in the city of Birmingham are too low. That has a consequence for the council's finances as well as for the environment. And I do have serious concerns about the number of commercial contracts, which anecdotally I'm hearing are being cancelled because of the lack of reliability of the service during the strike and the potential implications, again, for the city's financing. There is a context which hasn't been touched on here, which is about local government funding, which has a particular expression in Birmingham but affects all of our constituencies, except, of course, that the situation in Scotland is a devolved matter. We all remember when the previous leader and Prime Minister of the Conservative Party and Prime Minister boasted that he had redirected funding away from what he called deprived cities to more affluent areas, and that's certainly what we have seen in Birmingham. Research I've commissioned from the House of Commons Library shows that over the last decade, Birmingham has suffered the sharpest decrease in spending power of any unitary authority in England. Residents of the city, taking inflation into account, have lost 40p in the pound, more than 40p in the pound for every single person. We have lost more than 60% of the staff at Birmingham City Council because need has risen in addition to that broad fall in spending. And indeed, these challenges are not confined solely to Birmingham, although because of its levels of deprivation, perhaps the wave hit here first. And when we look locally, Solihull, Dudley, Worcestershire, Shropshire, these are all councils which are experiencing real severe financial difficulties, and indeed in Shropshire the scale of the cuts which are proposed are greater as a proportion of the council's revenue than those which are planned in Birmingham. And of course this extremely difficult financial inheritance has an effect on local authorities' ability to monitor and enforce fly tipping prevention. Keep Britain Tidy has said, appropriately enough, that we are facing a tipping point. Now, some of those problems are attitudinal, I think has been said. Once people know that they can dump once and then not face effective sanction, it is more likely to happen again. West Midlands Police has an important role to play in preventing fly tipping, but here again, West Midlands Police still has 1,200 fewer police officers and PCSOs than we did in 2010. Now, the Police and Crime Commissioner, Simon Foster, has recently submitted a bid to the Home Office to employ an additional 150 police officers, which would be a good start if that is granted, and I've raised this matter with the Prime Minister. I'll give way one more time, and I must conclude.
And first of all, I want to say I'm grateful for him explaining about the Police and Crime Commission and making a bid for some additional police officers, because try as I might, using the written parliamentary question process, Mr Stringer, and debate, I have been unable so far to find out how many police officers out of that 13,000 we might be getting in the West Midlands. So I'm genuinely grateful to him for that. But despite budgets and everything else, does he not agree with me that if you're a resident in Birmingham, where you've had a council tax increase of 17.5% in the last couple of years, all you want is to get this strike ended and get your bins emptied and the streets tidy again?
Well, I think what people in my constituency want is a regular and reliable service. They want the current backlog to be cleared. And there are streets in my constituency that have been waiting for a collection for 4 or 5 weeks. That, of course, that is completely unacceptable, particularly when, even during the period of the strike, there have been streets which have seen much more regular collections than that. We do need to modernise the service. I will just say on the point around council tax, which of course is a burden on constituents in all of our constituencies, that the impact assessment for the increase, the 10% increase that was seen in Birmingham last year, made it clear that approval for that increase was made by Number 10 and the Treasury when they were under Conservative leadership. Now, the decision has been taken this year to not go ahead with that second 10% increase that had been planned under the Conservatives. I think that is positive. We are also now starting to see significant funding coming into the city, reflecting again that higher level of need. Now, we heard from the party opposite over many years that they were going to bring forward a fair funding review for local government, and it never happened. I'm very glad that action is finally being taken on this matter, but of course it takes time to turn these situations around, and I hope that we will see progress on these matters very soon. Just returning, and I'll conclude here, Mr Stringer, to the government's plans. I noted that another West Midlands MP, the Minister, although not the Ombudsman member for Cambridge, who I know also takes these matters extremely seriously, but my humble friend, the member for Coventry East, said in answer to a written parliamentary question that we are committed to forcing fly tippers and vandals to clean up the mess that they have created as part of a crackdown on antisocial behaviour, and that further details on this commitment will be provided in due course. I think this is a very welcome and sensible measure, and I hope we will hear from the Minister either today or when we come back from recess what actions are planned, because people in my constituency are fed up of the actions of the organised criminal groups who are taking advantage of wider problems in society, including that very severe restriction on resources for our councils and our police. Thank you.
Front bench spokespeople, and I call Manuela Persigala on behalf of the Lib Dems.
Thank you, Mr. Stringer, and it's an honour to serve under your chairship. And thank you to the Right Honourable Member for Aldridge Brownhills for bringing forward this important debate. A debate on fly tipping, a crime against the environment, and damaging to our local communities, creating danger for children, pets, for example, with discarded drugs and drugs-taking equipment. The consequences of fly tipping extend beyond visual pollution. These affect soil, water, wildlife, and of course, human health. When hazardous material, such as asbestos and oil, contaminates groundwater and soil. Fly-tipped waste, including household appliances, can clog drainage systems and streams, preventing water flow and leading to flooding and overflows upstream. It has a devastating impact on wildlife. Fly tipping blights the roads and fields in my constituency too, of Stratford-on-Avon, harming nature and bringing a mental and financial toll to my constituents. Unfortunately, across the West Midlands, we are no stranger to litter on the sides of the roads and broken and abandoned furniture and car tires dumped in verges, fields and lay-bys. Our struggling local authorities cannot keep up with the scale of fly tipping, with incidents increasing nationally by 6% in the last year, up from 1.08 to 1.15 million. Fly tipping cost local authorities an average of over £13 million last year. And as the Honourable Member for Birmingham Northfields has noted, the burden on councils has increased to such an extent that they are forced to make impossible choices in their funding, and vital local authority funding services are suffering. This includes local authorities' ability to keep household waste centres open, which is deepening the fly tipping crisis. Where fly tipping occurs on private land, the situation is even worse. There's no local authority to oblige to clear up, so landowners have to take it upon themselves to clear up other people's waste. In my constituency in Stratford-on-Avon, as well in rural areas of the West Midlands, it is often our farmers who are paying the price for illegal fly tipping. Farmers are forced to pay extortionate fees to clear other people's rubbish off their lands. We also want local authorities and the Environment Agency to be able to have the resources to prosecute all instances of fly tipping, and the police to have the appropriate resources, including mobile ANPR cameras and rural drone kits to help and support with an investigation. According to the National Farmers Union, in 2023, the total cost of rural crime rose to a staggering £52.8 million, up nearly 22% since 2020. The Liberal Democrats, therefore, are calling for the government to commit to proper community policing and to a rural crime strategy, including fly tipping, to ensure officers are visible, trusted, and able to tackle local and rural crime. In my constituency, I also have some fantastic groups who generously give up their time to help clear our streets, our verges and fields, and our streams, including Rubbish Friends in Stratford and Clifford Chambers and Litter Free Ulster, as well as many litter-picking initiatives in villages, and we saw many of these during the Great British Spring Clean. I pay tribute to all of our community groups who volunteer to pick up rubbish thrown carelessly by others. But their actions alone won't keep our streets and fields clean and clear, and limit pollution in our streams and brooks and in groundwater. We need effective legislation and effective enforcement to get rid of illegal fly tipping. And what's more, I also would like to propose education as well. We must teach our children and young people in schools the value of the natural environment and the importance of protecting it. And I hope that the next generations in my constituency and beyond will grow up understanding the value of taking care of their communities and have that civic pride in their villages, towns and cities in which they live. Thank you.
Robbie Moore.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stringer, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And can I thank my right honourable friend, the member for Aldridge Brownhills, for bringing forward this really timely but important debate, because as was quite rightly and eloquently illustrated by my right honourable friend, fly tipping is an absolute crime. It blights our landscape, risks pollution and disease, and costs thousands of pounds to clear up. It is shocking, Mr. Stringer, that many people actively choose to fly tip, actively choose to dump their waste, causing huge cost, not only to the taxpayer in terms of clearance, but also has that hugely detrimental impact on the many local communities where not only fly tipping but littering takes place. And what a timely day to bring forward this debate, as many of our litter pickers are getting out there as part of the Great British Spring Clean. And therefore I'd like to comment on the points that have been made by my honourable friend for Berwick, Roxburgh and Selkirk in his working with keeping Duns blooming marvellous, as he has been advocating not only on their behalf but getting out with many other litter pickers across his constituency. And indeed, my right honourable friend for Aldridge and Brownhills commented on Walsall wood womblers. Walsall wood womblers and many others who she has been out helping in her constituency. And I'm pleased to hear that the member for Birmingham Northfield was also out litter picking this weekend on Sunday. But to be honest, Mr. String, I'm surprised that he managed to get back to the Westminster, given the huge amounts of rubbish that is on the streets of Birmingham this week. But it is noted that he was out litter picking this weekend. And I would like to just pick up on the points that rightly have been made on litter picking before we go on to the more bigger challenges that are faced across the West Midlands. That it is right to make the point that our parish councils that are actually at the grassroots of facing these challenges do need that extra little bit of support to try and deal with some of the litter waste that exists within their communities. And Mr. Stringer, I just want to put on record my thanks to the Ilkley litter pickers who meet every month. I've been lucky enough to go out litter picking with them across Ilkley and up at the Cow and Calf regularly, helping them. And they have had vast numbers of about 60 people now regularly turning up on a Sunday when they meet, which is incredible to see. Now, the situation in the West Midlands is absolutely shocking, and it is no wonder that fly tipping is getting considerably worse as a result. But the diagnosis of Labour's mismanagement is no shock at all to me, because Labour-run Bradford Council outrageously closed not only Golden Butts Household Waste and Recycling Centre in Ilkley, but also the Sugden End Household Waste and Recycling Centre up in the Worth Valley in my constituency earlier last year, despite massive protests from local people and a petition that I organised receiving over 9,000 signatures. And guess what? In Craven, Ilkley, the Worth Valley and in Keighley West wards, the closest wards to the shut tips, we have saw fly tipping increase as a result in the following year. And by contrast, those wards that are nearest the tip that remains open in the centre of Keighley, despite Labour-run Bradford Council wanting to close it in 2023, fly tipping reports are less. So quite simply, Labour local authorities can't see the wood for the trees. They cut waste services to save, or to supposedly save money, but don't take account of the vast increases in fly tipping that it will be as a result. And who has to pick up this cost but the taxpayer? Waste that is far more expensive to remove once it's fly tipped, that would be more proper to be disposed of at a proper waste facility. And just because Labour have removed these waste services doesn't mean that waste won't stop piling up. And that is exactly what we are seeing in Birmingham. Because Birmingham City Council are failing to get to grips with the huge challenges over the last month. And who is being impacted by this? But the residents, the council taxpayers on the back of their council taxes dramatically increasing over recent years.
Shall I give way?
I will give way.
I'm grateful. I'm going to make the same point to the Shadow Ministers what I made to the Honourable Member for Birmingham Northfields about the tactics that the Unite trade unionists are using. This blockade of the depots to stop the refuge trucks from leaving, and the slow walking in front of the lorries to stop them getting out to collect their rubbish. The Honourable Member for Birmingham Northfields was a bit reluctant to call that out. Will the Shadow Minister join me in saying that type of action is completely unacceptable and should not be allowed in this day and age?
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention, and this is absolute action that needs to be condemned. Why? Because those that are being impacted are the hard-working residents of Birmingham that are dutifully paying their council tax, despite it having increased as a result of Labour's mismanagement of the council, but yet they are expected to be taking their waste to an allocated disposal site, either that has been allocated by the council to dispose of their waste, or those wagons, waste wagons that are needing to get out of the depot are being held up by those that are striking, and yet the member for Birmingham Northfield will not actively, openly come out and condemn their behaviour that is having a negatively impact not only on his constituents, dare I say, but the wider residents across Birmingham. And if he wants to intervene, I'll let him use this opportunity to condemn their actions right now if he chooses.
Lawrence Turner.
I've made my comments. I really believe that the member opposite is acting irresponsibly, because we are in discussions, I say we, in the sense that the council, which I'm not a member of, but the council and the union are in discussions. The most important thing, the most important thing is making sure that this strike ends, that no new equal pay liability. Let's not forget the first equal pay liability in Birmingham arose under Conservative leadership of the council with huge costs to my residents. The most important thing is that we get that resolution, and the Ombudsman can grandstand all he likes. It does not bring that dispute 1 inch closer to being financed. I'm conscious that I'm intervening, and it's a long time. I've commented on this issue over the weekend. They stand on the record.
Thank you, Mr. Stringer. And I note again that the member for Birmingham Northfield has not condemned the actions, and yet who is being penalised but the residents of Birmingham, as waste piles up outside their houses. And yet the BBC was reporting on this very action that was being taken last night, and not only did they report on the actions that were being taken by Unite Trade Unionists, but indeed the residents that were being impacted. Indeed, they reported residents that couldn't even get down their street for being blockaded within their own homes from having piles of rubbish outside their own homes, causing a huge nuisance, a huge impact of smell, and a huge impact on their livelihoods and their way of life. And that is completely unacceptable, and I will give way.
Thank you. I'm grateful to the Shadow Minister for giving way, because it was very obvious last week in the Chamber that the Minister seemed to just wash his hands of this. He passed it back to Birmingham. But I just come back to the same point. Does my honourable friend agree? The people that are suffering are the residents of Birmingham and those in the surrounding areas. What's wrong with actually standing up and saying, come on folks, let's get together, let's sort this out. It's the 21st century and we have rubbish on the streets of our second biggest city.
And I thank my right honourable friend for her intervention, and she is absolutely right. Because if you're a resident in Birmingham paying your council tax, you want action. You do just not want talk after talk, discussion after discussion. Residents have been impacted by this for too long. A month in certain circumstances, and I was in Birmingham 2 weekends ago, and the level of rubbish that is on the streets is completely unacceptable in Britain's second largest city. And yet, what is the Minister doing about this? What is the Minister doing to hold Labour-run Birmingham to account, and what action is this government going to take other than just passing the buck down the line to Labour-run Birmingham Council to sort this out? And indeed, there are other local authorities that are impacted by this. I note that Lichfield Council has just offered their services, their waste services to Birmingham to help tackle the mountain of waste. Highly commendable action to do. But what is the impact on Lichfield ratepayers, and is this what they want for their council tax payments? So therefore I'd like to ask the Minister What is he doing in terms of ensuring that those other local authorities, that neighbour Birmingham, are going to be compensated as a result for them providing assistance? The net increase is undealt with waste as a result of Labour-run Bradford Council. The net increase is currently running at an estimated 1,000 tonnes per week, and that's enough to fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool of rubbish just every 2 weeks. How will Birmingham residents not be tempted to fly tip in Birmingham and further afield, in places like Walsall, that are already right on the periphery and likely to be impacted, when they have literally run out of pavement space to put their rubbish on? It is hardly their fault, Mr Stringer, when they pay their council tax and yet Labour Council can't be bothered to get around the table properly and sort this issue out. And the impact is also impact on local investment, because Birmingham, under Andy Street, saw a huge amount of inward private investment, not only coming into Birmingham but the wider West Midlands area, to benefit the many residents, but yet the level of nuisance that this is causing, not only Birmingham but the wider area, is significantly worse. And I will give way.
I'm grateful to him for giving way a second time. I must say, listening to this, I feel there's a real rewriting of history going on. Now, under the leadership of the Conservatives, the sharpest central government cuts of any local authority in England were inflicted on Birmingham. Will he apologise for his party's role in that?
Dare I say that the mismanagement under the Labour administration at Birmingham is the absolute result of what residents are now being faced with. Not only an increase in council tax across Birmingham, but a significantly negative impact on the level of service that they are having and or not having at the moment, with their rubbish not being collected. And I fear that the worst is yet to come for the people of Birmingham. We have already had reports of rats superhighways under streets, tens of millions of rats scurrying between rubbish piles and commuting through sewers. But what happens, Mr Stringer, when the rubbish is finally removed, when there are no rubbish bags on the streets, when the food in the rubbish has been removed? We will see starved rats running around the sewers and looking elsewhere to find their food. And I fear for the residents whose homes may be impacted, and therefore the additional cost that will be put on Birmingham City Council to deal with the impact of vermin on the streets, not only the impact of clearing the waste. The terrible lesson from this saga, Mr Stringer, is obvious. Labour's mismanagement of Birmingham has left residents in the lurch, with literally a mountain of rubbish on their doorsteps. Just 1 year after the budget-busting council tax rises of nearly 20% since 2023. From council tax to local services, the facts show that Conservative councils deliver more for less. In Labour-run Birmingham, they don't appear to be delivering anything. And I want to just come on to the points that have been raised by my right honourable friend to do with the initiatives that Conservative-led Walsall Council are bringing out, and using the examples of the Environmental Crime Scene Initiative, which seems like a great idea, treating every fly-tipping scene as a crime scene, taking a robust approach. And what have we seen? Reports drop from 40 reports a day to 5. 70% of fly tipping being removed. An absolute example, if you have a Conservative-led council taking a robust approach, that the problem gets solved, delivering a better result for the council taxpayer. And that is the result of best practice. Under the previous Conservative government, Mr Stringer, we delivered £2.2 million to councils struggling to tackle fly tipping, helping them get ahead of the problem. And we have seen increases on spot fines. We have seen a fly-tipping grant scheme roll out. We have seen better and more collaborative approaches being rolled out. But I do fear, as has been picked up in this debate, for rural councils and our farmers, which are most impacted and on the periphery of those urban-based environments. So why on earth did the government remove the over £100 million Rural Service Delivery Grant, which was a grant that was aimed at specifically helping those rural councils deliver services which undoubtedly is much costlier and harder to deliver in the more rural-based environment. Why on earth did the Labour administration remove that grant to those rural councils? So far, this Labour administration have only committed to revising statutory guidelines in the police and crime bill that is coming before the House. Mr Stringer, it shows a starking lack of awareness that when waste in Birmingham is piling up at a rate of one bin bag every 4.5 seconds, the best that this government can offer is some revised guidelines and literally advocating further talking shops to be taking place in Birmingham. So I ask the Minister, what on earth is he doing? What on earth is this Labour government doing to get to grips with the problems in Birmingham? Whilst there is nothing wrong with sharing and enforcing best practice, it is not the fly-tipping revolution we need. It's simple, Mr Stringer, as we see by Labour-run Bradford Council and now in Labour-run Birmingham. It's simple. Vote Labour and you get trash.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Stringer. It's a pleasure to speak with you in the chair. And I'd start... Anyone would think there's an election season going on, wouldn't they? I'd like to congratulate the Right Honourable Member for Aldridge Brownhills on securing today's debate, and I thought making a very thoughtful and considered introduction. She raised a number of questions for me, which I will attempt to address, but I would say that normally my honourable friend, the member for Coventry East, would be here, and I think she asked for a champion for these issues, and I can think of no better champion than the member for Coventry East, but I'm sure she would welcome the cross-party support that the Right Honourable Lady offered. And she made a range of, I thought sensible suggestions around points on licences, for instance, which I know is under consideration. She talked about having a national debate, a national action plan. All of these things, I think, are under consideration and are good ideas. But I also would like to thank my honourable friend from Birmingham Northfields, not only for making an excellent speech on the issues around waste and fly tipping, but also putting some context into the political argument that's going on around the history of Birmingham. And I think these issues have to be understood in that wider context. But going back to fly tipping, Mr Stringer, this is not just a load of rubbish. It's a serious crime that blights local communities and the environment. And we very much appreciate the difficulty that it poses to councils, other landowners, and of course to residents. Now, local councils reported over 1 million fly tipping incidents in 2023-24, representing a significant cost burden to the UK economy. And over the last 5 years, these reported fly tipping incidents have increased by 20%. This is unacceptable, and this government will take back control of our streets and our countryside. We're committed to forcing fly tippers and vandals to clean up the mess they've created as part of a crackdown on antisocial behaviour. And we look forward to providing further details on this commitment in due course. Now, we recognise the crucial role that councils have in tackling fly tipping. Fly tipping happens for a variety of reasons, from people misunderstanding how to deal with their waste, I'm afraid, to hardened criminals seeking to make money from the coordinated dumping of large amounts of waste. So the response will vary depending on the circumstances, but we want to see an effective enforcement strategy at the heart of local authority efforts to combat fly tipping. Indeed, I would strongly encourage them to make good use of their powers, which include prosecution, because that can lead to a significant fine, a community sentence, or even imprisonment and compensation for a landowner's clearance costs. Now, much was said of the splendid record the Walsall Council has. The Right Honourable Lady talked at length about it, but I do note they failed to bring a single prosecution in 2023-24. Now, while sentencing is a matter for the courts, I understand the National Fly Tipping Prevention Group, chaired by DEFRA officials, have previously produced guidance to support councils present robust cases to court. Honourable and Right Honourable members across the House may wish to bring this to the attention of their local councils. Now, instead of prosecuting, local authorities can issue fixed penalty notices of up to £1,000 to those who fly tip, or £600 to those who pass their household waste to someone without the proper licence. They also have powers to stop, search and seize vehicles as suspected fly tippers. And to help councils make full and proper use of their enforcement powers, we are seeking powers in the Crime and Policing Bill to provide statutory enforcement guidance which councils will need to have regard to. But we have... I will.
Wendy Martin.
If I just may briefly intervene on the Minister, just to, perhaps his records aren't quite as up to date as mine, but just to gently point out that Walsall Council successfully prosecuted an individual for fly tipping a fridge whilst serving a suspended sentence order, and that was in February of 2024.
Minister.
Well, I'm very pleased to hear it. That sounds like one in that case, which is better than none. But we are under no illusion about the scale of the pressures that local authorities are facing. We all know how much pressure they're under, and that does impact the services they can provide to local people. Through the 2025-26 local government finance settlement, there will be over £5 billion of new funding for local services over and above local council tax, and the majority of funding in the local government finance settlement is unring-fenced, recognising that local leaders are best placed to identify local priorities. So it will be a choice for local authorities. They will make their choices. Now, of course, the situation in Birmingham has been raised, and I absolutely recognise the misery and disruption it is causing to residents. I hear what members opposite say. And it's in the interests of all parties, and most importantly the residents of Birmingham and the areas around, that this industrial action is brought to a close as soon as possible. And we encourage all parties to redouble their efforts to find a resolution. Now, we believe it's right this continues to be a locally led response, as is usual in the case of council-run services, such as rubbish collections. Birmingham City Council did declare a major incident on Monday, the 31st of March, which means it can increase its street cleaning operation and fly tipping removal by bringing in extra vehicles and crews. The Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government updated the House on Monday, the 7th of April, on how the situation is being managed following that declaration of the major incident, and the Secretary of State, the Minister of State for Local Government and MHCLG officials are monitoring the situation closely. Birmingham City Council continues to lead the response as appropriate, but there are cross-government mechanisms which have been activated to ensure a coordinated response, with MHCLG in the lead and DEFRA supporting. This backlog of waste must be dealt with swiftly to address public health concerns, and the Council has already begun its work to collect the hazardous accumulation of waste over the weekend, and the Government stands ready to play its part in supporting the Council in that work. I will give way.
I thank the Minister for giving way. Can I just ask, how bad does it need to get for the residents of Birmingham before the Government steps in and takes more stronger action?
We absolutely recognise the gravity of the situation, but we believe the best thing to do is to work with people locally to try and get a solution. It's a complicated situation, as has been outlined by Honourable Friend, and I actually think it would be better to concentrate on trying to get a solution than score political points. But in a time-honoured... I'll carry on for a minute. In a time-honoured spirit of scoring political points, I will go back to the intervention made by my Honourable Friend from Ealing Southall, who did query why it is that the opposition voted against the deposit return scheme. It seems to me that vote was actually just a few months ago in January, when 67 Conservatives voted against the very policy they had promoted in government. So if we're going to have this knockabout tit-for-tat across the chamber, let's recognise there are issues on both sides. Now, absolutely, I'll happily have a further tit-for-tat with the honourable gentleman.
I'm grateful, Mr Stringer. I view this as an important part of our democratic process, not a tit-for-tat. It's important to recognise what the concerns were around that deposit return scheme. I was a minister in the Scotland office when the Scottish Government put forward proposals, and the previous government concern was how it was going to impact on the internal market, the operation of the internal market across the UK. Is the current government saying that is no longer a concern, having different deposit return schemes in different parts of the UK, or is that no longer a priority?
The point we're making is that it's quite extraordinary that a piece of legislation that was promoted by the party when it was in government now appears to be not supported when they're in opposition. Now, I'm going to move on back to fly tipping, because that's the subject of debate. Now, we absolutely recognise the role the public have, Mr Stringer, in tackling fly tipping, because approximately 60% of fly tips involve household wastes. and householders have a legal duty to take all reasonable measures to ensure that they only give their waste to an authorised person. They should check the register of waste carriers to avoid giving waste to criminals who promise quick, cheap waste collection but only go on to dump it in our communities. And I've asked officials to look at how we can strengthen the current waste carriers, brokers and dealers regulatory regime to crack down on these waste criminals. We also need to help householders to get rid of their rubbish before they turn to rogue waste collectors. Through simpler recycling, all householders will receive a comprehensive and consistent set of waste and recycling services which will end confusion and enable householders to recycle as much waste as possible. DEFRA recently published guidance to ensure that local authorities consider certain factors when they review services, such as residual waste collections, to ensure that reasonable standards are maintained. These include ensuring that there are no disamenity impacts, such as an increase in fly tipping of residual waste. We expect local authorities to monitor any changes to collection frequencies to ensure there are no adverse consequences. We also recognise the importance of household waste recycling centres, a point that was raised by members opposite. It is for local authorities to make those decisions. They hold the responsibility for the operation and management of these in their area. Now, I also very much recognise the difficulty that fly tipping poses to rural areas and recognise that over 80% of farmers have said that they have been affected by fly tipping on their land. And we will continue to work with the National Farmers Union and others through the National Fly Tipping Prevention Group to promote and disseminate good practice on how to prevent fly tipping on private land. Whether it's councils, individuals or businesses, when we all work together, we can tackle fly tipping and littering more effectively. And we're working with the National Fly Tipping Prevention Group, which includes councils, the Environment Agency and police representatives, to identify issues, highlight innovative ways of tackling fly tipping and share best practice. And members on both sides spoke warmly about their experiences, both themselves, and I commend all those who've been out picking up litter themselves, as I have indeed done in the past, and also all the volunteers and the voluntary groups around the country. So the government's been proud to support Keep Britain Tidy's excellent Great British Spring Clean campaign, and my colleague, the Minister for Nature, was pleased to speak at the launch event earlier this year, and DEFRA colleagues recently cleaned a section of the Regent's Canal with the help of the Canal and River Trust. And I'd urge everyone to try and get involved in helping to create an environment we can be proud of. But of course, reducing waste in the first place should mean that there's less of it to be dumped unlawfully. And in our manifesto, we committed to moving to a circular economy where resources are kept in use for longer and waste is minimised. DEFRA's Secretary of State has convened a circular economy task force of experts from industry, academia, civil society and beyond to help government develop a circular economy strategy for England. The strategy will be supported by a series of roadmaps detailing the interventions that the government and others will make. The outputs will, among other things, aim to support economic growth and tackle threats to our environment and circularity, such as with fly tipping. What gets tipped is often landfilled rather than recycled, remanufactured or repurposed. So in conclusion, Mr Stringer, this government believes that whether you live in the countryside, the towns or city, you should walk through your community feeling proud of a clean environment free of rubbish and litter. That's why we're committed to stamping out antisocial behaviour like fly tipping from our streets and countryside. It's time to dump the excuses. Working with councils, regulators and others, we will force offenders to clean up their mess, put a stop to waste criminals and together keep our communities clean.
Wendy Morgan to reply to the debate.
Thank you, Mr Stringer. Well, I'd first just like to thank members here today for contributing to this debate. To my right honourable friend, the member for Berwickshire, Roxburghshire and Selkirk, the honourable gentleman from Birmingham Northfield and the honourable lady from Ealing Southall, plus the shadow ministers. When it comes to fly tipping and litter, it seems to me that there is a lot of cross-party support. I think we would all agree that we need to do more and we need to go further. So I, for one, will certainly be following the police and crime bill very, very closely in the forthcoming weeks. But I have to say, there is one area that it was quite clear that we disagree on, and that is around the situation in Birmingham. So I will conclude by saying it is disappointing that time and time again members on the opposite benches just will not condemn the strikes, and the government continues to wash its hands of this shocking situation that is ongoing in Birmingham on the doorsteps of so many authorities like my own. And I would gently say to the Minister, if he is serious about taking back control of the streets when it comes to rubbish and waste, can he please start in Birmingham?
The question is that this House has considered the impact of fly tipping on communities in the West Midlands. As many other of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. Order, order. Sorry. The sitting suspended till 4.